Welcome to Trainer HL Talks, a podcast about architecture, planning, and design trends, as well as the current events and noteworthy topics in the field. I am your host, Megan Brock, introducing today's topic, the impact of COVID-19 on higher education learning. Since earlier this year, higher education institutions globally have made the most dramatic shift in teaching methods in history, and it was made almost overnight. Those of you who have followed news surrounding the pandemic's effect on higher education already know this shift is changing the operational and financial landscapes of many colleges and universities. But what does that mean for students? What about the class of 2020? We wanted to know what it's like being a participant in this learning shift, and what students really need and want moving forward. In that spirit, we invited 4 students from various universities to share their thoughts with us. Joining me today are Hassan and Nadia, who are interns in the Student Life Studio at Trainer HL, as well as Ashley and Anna, who are also current students. Joining me from Trainer HL is Tim Reynolds and Nedia Zahiri. Tim and Nedia help colleges design spaces that help students live, learn, and grow as they prepare themselves for professional careers. So thank you all for joining me today virtually. Nedia, I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Megan. I'm Nedia Zahiri. I'm a principal at Trainer HL, and I am our Student Life Studio leader within higher ed.
My name's Tim Reynolds. I'm the principal in our Science and Technology group here at Trainer HL.
Tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you're involved in on campus, what your majors are, anything that might be of interest to us.
So my name is Anna Stafford. I am at this point technically a senior at KU. I'm hoping to graduate at the end of December. I'm a history major, and as far as what I do on campus, I do a lot of archival work. I was doing before the whole COVID-19 thing happened, I was doing a sort of history internship, working a lot at the Spencer Archive, and would spend a lot of time at the libraries and things of that sort. But yeah.
My name's Nadia Latini. I'm going into my 5th year in the 5-year accelerated master's program at KU. I am a part of Gamma Phi Beta sorority, and that's honestly about all I have time with my internship and school and trying to stay caught up in everything. So.
I am Ashley. I go to Butler Community College here in Wichita, and I'm studying culinary arts and restaurant management.
And my name is Hassan Haltam. I'm an architecture student. I'll be a senior next year, doing my undergrad there in University of Arlington here in Texas. And it's been an interesting semester.
I can't imagine what this is like for you guys and how you've felt about it. But let me ask you first, based on what you've gone through, if you could describe your experience relative to this semester in one word or one phrase, what would it be?
Mess. It's a mess. Politics, school, the whole organization. I mean, I really appreciate our weekly emails from Trainer and the fact that we're so involved in keeping up to date with everything. I really appreciate that because I feel like we're not getting much from the university and in aspects of a weekly update. Hey guys, it's not as personal as I feel like our work messages have been. And I think having even working still has made this feel a little bit more normal.
I think my word would be disconnect. In every sense of the word, people have problems connecting physically online, everyone's trying to figure out Zoom, everyone's trying to, navigate this new way of learning, but also there's just a disconnect from the university, not being on campus every day. There's a disconnect. Obviously politically it's being kind of polarized, and that's really strange. So there's just a lot of disconnection with everything.
Challenging, very challenging. My degree plan is meant to be very hands-on. We do events all year round. We actually cook in class. We're supposed to be able to show step by step how we do everything. And suddenly we don't have a space where we can just show our teacher, this is what we're doing along the way. We have to figure out how to show it from home.
For me, the word I would think would be, it's hard to put it in a word, but definitely challenging. Yeah, I agree with that.
So, Ashley, when you say challenging, tell me what's been the most challenging part for you?
I've been working 3 jobs at a time pretty much for the past 2 years, along with being a student. So going from having a place to constantly be and then going to school and talking to my teachers and talking to other students and then going back to one of those 3 places I always have to be to being in my house staring at the same thing all the time with my coworkers being my cats is a little bit weird and stressful.
Hassan, tell me what you mean by the word challenging.
Well, I think it's been challenging for everyone. For me personally, ever since I started the architecture program, I transferred from Finland. I was there for 2 years, and then I transferred here. And I started my undergrad when I was in my late 30s, so I'm not your traditional student. And I've done a lot of things in business in the past, so it was shocking to me that you can't have a pinup on a PowerPoint. I didn't get it. So when I was talking to my professors in Finland, I was like, "Wait, guys, why don't we just do this on the projector? It's going to be awesome. I got all these visuals and stuff." And they were saying, "Well, no, that's not how we do it." So now it's been challenging in that everybody had to shift gears, but it's also been a blessing in a way because you can do a lot of effects and things like that when you're showing somebody your screen. The challenge has been for the communication, and like what Ashley was saying. I mean, it's really hard for the professor to be like, no, 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 that's too much salt, or no, 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 you shouldn't put that building here. That should be over here. Like our last project was a master plan in Dallas. It was a huge, huge scope. So the challenge was definitely that the professor wasn't able to, put some trace paper over my drawings and fix what I'd messed up so royally, as a student.
It's an assumption that what we're experiencing now is going to become our new normal somehow. Things have changed so much, and we are all feeling those changes. So let's have a conversation about what this learning experience has been and what you think it's going to evolve into, and maybe some pros and cons of what this experience is bringing.
Sure, yeah. I would say that overall, I would say that I had a really positive experience. Obviously, it wasn't ideal. A lot of my classes, especially in the history department, rely on discussion in class where you're interacting with your peers and your instructors. So it was very difficult to sort of go from that to most days just not even having that kind of discourse with anyone. Besides, one of my classes would hold like Zoom lectures twice a week. Everyone else just kind of was like here's what you need to do. Get in touch with us if you have any other if you need any other information. And I was able to handle that pretty well, but so it was positive in the sense that the transition was pretty smooth, but I guess one con of it was that you miss that interaction that is so helpful in learning the material.
Yeah, I would have to say the same thing. It's a lot of like the accountability of being in class is lost. Just having those conversations, especially with my studio class, it's a 6-credit class. Like we really rely on feedback from our peers and our professor. So it was just hard having a review session that was on Zoom. So it wasn't necessarily like the feedback we would have hoped for a final project, but I think we did a really good job actually in handling it. My studio, we had like this really big Zoom session with like 40 participants, and we had like 20 different professors, or not professors, but associates of professors, like people who worked at different firms around the US. They were able to call in, so we were able to actually get feedback from architects. So I think that was a cool way of handling the transition, and maybe can be used again.
How did that work exactly? I mean, that it was 40 people and they were all on, and how was it a cool experience?
With that session, he did these like breakout sessions where we would get different reviewers and we would all reconvene back to our Zoom session, and then we'd hop out in these breakout sessions with like 2 reviewers, and I got to meet with 4 reviewers, and that was more than I had expected to.
How important is the face-to-face interaction that you have with your student peers to you relative to your college experience?
Well, in restaurant management and culinary, I kind of feel like it can be a hugely beneficial thing for us. We all have different ideas of how restaurants should be run, how kitchens should be run. We all share ideas for recipes. So we kind of build off of each other, and having the opportunity to interact with each other really helps with that. But at the same time, there's other ways to do that that don't involve physically being in front of each other. We all have social media, so we could just as easily get on a Zoom call once a week and talk about what we thought of the class and everything, and how we feel about the recipes, what we would improve on and everything. It doesn't require us to be in the same room.
Yeah, and it's funny, Ashley, you should mention social media, because imagine if this happened 15 years ago, pre-Facebook or pre-WhatsApp or pre-anything or pre-Zoom or all the, we would just be so out in the middle of the lake, we'd all be just lost.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how these things have kind of progressed to the point where we are now, and now everything kind of kicked into high gear where we need all this tech, to communicate. But yeah, I agree with everything Ashley said, definitely. I mean, it's a very collaborative effort.
Yeah, I feel like since we've been through so many years, we have like a group of just architecture friends. We text a group message and just stay like up to date with each other and just checking in constantly. Like, how are you guys doing? Like, we know this is weird. Like, don't make it feel normal. Like, so I feel like it's nice to have like a space where you can talk freely to your like classmates and like let them know like, hey, I'm going through the same thing too. Like, it's not just you, like things are going to be okay, just encouragement.
Yeah, keeping in touch with like friends has been sort of difficult. Like a lot of my friends that I had here just went back home to like be with their parents. And so it's hard to kind of stay in touch, but we've been trying. But also there's like, even just on social media, keeping in touch with other classmates and seeing that everyone's kind of going through the same thing is really helpful. And it keeps you motivated, the least bit that you can, because you can see that everyone else is also going through it and you're not alone and struggling to keep the faith.
There's a certain feel that you must have had being a student and doing things on campus. How is that changing for you? And is it something that you miss at all?
Yeah, obviously I miss my friends. Everything's been really hard. They had to like move everyone out of our house, and everyone's home basically. It's a weird transition, and especially since like I have a younger sister who's going into her freshman year at K-State, I'm kind of thinking about her and like worried about her. Like, she's not going to have the same opportunity I had in coming to school and like kind of being set loose, like, and making all these new friends. And I'm like, is she even going to be able to go on to campus and kind of get that same opportunity? And probably not the way that we're handling things right now in universities. So it worries me.
Yeah, I definitely feel a disconnect not being on campus every day. I feel like being on campus and seeing other students just going through the same thing that you're going through, and then, like I mentioned before, having class discussions and seeing instructors and just having spaces where you can sit and do homework for a moment, it makes it feel more real. And so when you are in your apartment trying to do the same schoolwork, it doesn't feel as meaningful, if that makes sense. And it feels a lot less, I just feel, like I said, very disconnected and unmotivated not being on campus around everyone.
Mm-hmm. I think the burnout is a lot more intense too, just since you're trying to do everything as efficiently as you were when you were in person at home now. And finding like, okay, where are these spaces and these zones I can make in my space now. It's been interesting.
It's hard to find, the right spot to work when you're in the same spot every day. And if this were to continue, I would try to, set up more of a space for me to like really sit and do my work that feels a bit more official and comfortable. So yeah, I would try to get like more materials to make it feel a bit different than what it is now, because right now it's very casual workspace.
I've always tried to get groups together and try to do competitions and things like that in the university with colleagues and peers and stuff. And that's kind of challenging now, but at the same time we have more downtime, so maybe not. But I think it's harder to break the ice and really get to know somebody, the way we're doing it now. But I think there needs to be more consistency, because this is something odd. Every professor used a different platform,
Right.
which was it was so inconsistent. I'd be like, okay, Alan's class, is that Zoom or is that Teams? Which one is that? And it's like you're always trying to like pedal back and, okay, which platform is this class in? So I think the university especially should have a consistency.
Yeah, that's what we did too. We were all supposed to use our online platform. It was Canvas, but every teacher used it differently, and it was so hard to keep up with who was doing what.
Exactly.
From a technology standpoint, did your institutions help out in any way to get faster internet connections at home or where you live? Did they offer you laptops if you didn't have one? Was there any assistance that you were getting relative to technology, or were you on your own?
The only assistance that Butler offered was they made it so that you could access Zoom for free. There was a limit on it before where if you talked for more than 45 minutes, it would cut you off if you weren't paying for it. And they made it so that if you accessed it through the Butler website, it was free. But other than that, I think the expectation was that you already had your camera or your laptop or whatever you needed.
Okay.
At the beginning of all this, I actually had to buy a higher internet speed just because I wasn't able to do everything that I was needing to do at home. So that was kind of one of the trials and tribulations just very early on. I now looking at it, even during those review sessions back to like our final reviews, we had professors like casually mentioning how they're going to be teaching the second year student studios online and how this is preparing them right now for that. And there's not a lot of transparency and like letting students know kind of like, okay, what's going on and like how can we better prepare, because I feel like it's just mentioned like, I don't know. I feel like there could be more transparency from the university and like enabling us to be more prepared, especially if this is how it's going to be again in the fall.
Yeah, I would agree with the transparency aspect of it. I definitely feel like my professors did the best that they could at such a short notice, only having a couple of weeks to rework, the syllabus and get everyone, like get a scheduled time for people to meet if we were meeting during Zoom. So I feel like it went okay for the amount of time that they had. And I think when the university does make a decision about the fall semester, hopefully over the summer they'll have more time to kind of tweak the problems that people were having and make it a little bit easier for the majority of the students to have better success with the whole online learning. Because I feel like I did all right personally, but I could definitely tell that in some of my classes there were other people who were struggling not meeting or maybe had a harder time making connections just learning online.
Yeah, definitely. I even had in the beginning one of my good friends in my studio class. He would have to come over like the first couple weeks of school because he just didn't have Wi-Fi working in his apartment. So he would come over and we would do our Zoom sessions, and then he had to buy some whatever Midco, just to make things easier for him. But then at that point, it's also his computer isn't working like up to its best,
Yeah, at Arlington, they were pretty supportive. I think that you need good equipment to do CAD and Rhino and whatever else you need in architecture school. So they were actually pretty supportive. They did supply quite a bit of equipment, I think, were on loan and things like that. And there was access to the computer labs even during the pandemic because of things like Lumion, just for rendering and stuff for final projects. I don't know how they policed it. I was fortunate because of my place at Trainer. I've got some nice equipment as far as I have my work laptop, and one of the computers in Lawrence there where you are, Tim, has Lumion, which is a really good rendering software, and I was able to remote into that. So it was a blessing to be part of the Trainer HL team during this because I had a lot of what I needed. But yeah, the school did okay, I guess. A lot of people on the calls and in the sort of the meetings and studio, you could tell some of them were working off their phone and stuff like that. So I mean, it was pretty limited, but they did offer it. It could be that the students just didn't take them up on the offer.
So tell me about, have your institutions made plans for the fall semester? And if they have, what are they?
Butler's current plan is to start classes up again as usual, like on campus for the fall. They're actually doing a lot of stuff right now where if you take 6 credit hours during the summer, they'll give you 3 free credit hours in the fall. So they're trying to encourage us to get as much of it as we can done this summer to minimize how much time we have to spend there during the fall.
Yeah, and with Arlington, they're also saying they're treating everything pretty normally. They're not really giving us a plan B at all, which is odd because I really doubt that it's going to be on campus. But everything, the description of the classes, everything is face to face, and they give you a room number and all that stuff. But I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it.
I think it's especially to do with the fact that I think schools are still kind of giving hope that we're going to be in person, but then you talk to professors and then you hear kind of a different story. And I think there's a lot of confusion and a lot of people aren't planning too far ahead. I don't know. I talked to the dean actually during the first week of quarantine, and he was letting me know about how the fact we can't have students back on in the fall without having a second wave in September. And then at that rate, why would we even invite students back on campus? So I'm like, are you telling me we're not on campus in the fall? Are we going to come here for a month in person and do weird hybrid, how is that going to work? And especially with housing, I'm trying to figure out. And I had a lot more questions, but I obviously didn't want to overwhelm him because he's dealing with tons, I'm sure, already. But if I had to ask him for something, I think it would be how are we gonna help the kids who don't have the technology to be able to work the softwares that we need efficiently? Because I know one of my biggest issues is my computer is really slow, my laptop is really slow, and so I struggle with finishing work efficiently sometimes. So I'm wondering, what about the people who don't have even a laptop, who have to go into the Bridge Lab? So that's in-person stuff they have to deal with.
I haven't heard anything about housing specifically. I think the last thing I saw was similar to Nadia, which was just they're still tentatively planning for us to be back on campus in the fall. But then just recently I saw that Wichita State they're doing hybrid / online. That was the last thing I saw from them. So that sort of made me question, I shouldn't get my hopes up too high because other, comparable universities are doing things differently. So yeah, I think right now it's just very up in the air.
So have none of them talked to you about social distancing and when you get back on campus? Have they talked to you about masks? Have they talked to you about we're limiting the number of students in a class so you can maintain social distancing? Any information?
Not yet.
Okay.
Which is surprising, really.
Well, what are you comfortable with? What types of protocols need to be in place before you feel safe returning to campus?
I think if KU and Lawrence more specifically had a comprehensive way of testing and retesting and tracking the virus in our local town, then I would be more if we could live see who has this virus on campus, are we in danger of transferring it? And I don't know if we'll get there, but I think that would make me feel most comfortable. I know that there hasn't really been a comprehensive way of tracking the virus in the US. And that's a little scary, especially since we don't know how, like, who and how many people have it. So I don't think I would be comfortable with being back on campus with the amount of people that usually are on campus until we have something like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think there would need to be like a more cohesive way of letting us know how we can be safe around other people, testing, and also just holding people accountable for being hygienic, which I have no clue how they would even do that, but it would definitely have to be very well thought out and organized, and I would have to feel very secure with whatever the plan was before I would feel comfortable being on campus. But as far as like what that looks like, it's really hard to say because I don't know, within the sheer number of people, it'd be hard to really keep everyone on the same page and keep the whole campus clean.
So tell me, given the fact that your institutions are saying they're going to go back on campus, how do you feel about that? Are you worried about it? Are you confident that your institutions are going to take the steps necessary to keep you safe?
I think that my instructors personally are going to try to, and I do think that the dean of our school cares, but at the same time, I don't think that it's the best idea, especially going into the winter season when all of this is more likely to spike again and everything. It doesn't seem like a smart idea to start going back so soon.
It's almost shocking to me that they would, even the lack of clarity about what the plans are is surprising. So I mean, I'm sure they would love to keep it as safe as they can, but how much is really in anyone's control, you know? So I mean, short of building cubes for everyone to be in, and then even that has weird implications. It's just I can't foresee this thing as really being a smart move as far as going back in the fall. And especially if it was a successful semester. I really don't know how the results were. Personally, we were pretty far along when we started, so it was a pretty quick and easy wrap up for me. I mean, there was the challenges, obviously, but I think we could probably keep doing this until we have some closure. But I can't see why it would be wise to do it on, face to face, because these rooms are pretty tight, and air change in these buildings are pretty bad. Tim, you know how these schools are. Everything's old as far as the air exchange. So.
Well, and I think that's something that schools are going to need to reassure students that they've taken things into account. Even if you think about things in your school, like you're walking down a hallway, passing people all of the time. How do you social distance in areas like that? How do you do it in collaboration areas? As one of my professor friends asked me yesterday, how do you do it in public restrooms? Is there going to be a monitor that says no more than 2 people in the restroom at one time? I think it's going to be difficult to police this.
So, what are your concerns about your career after school? Do you feel prepared? What are your questions?
I definitely feel like I've kind of just put off just thinking about the future in general. Like, I feel like that's what this has done to me, is just, I feel like I'm just kind of at a standstill, and I'm still thinking about what I would like to do in the future, but it's hard to even think about that when I don't even know what, August and September is going to look like, and what, like, am I going to be able to graduate? Are things going to be so different that I totally have to alter my academic progress? So I definitely am still thinking about my future career, but it's also just kind of hard to even fathom what it's going to be like, because I don't want to get my hopes up and have all these expectations and then be really let down. So it's tricky.
The advice I've been hearing from I've been listening to a lot of NPR. They've got coronavirus daily and all of their daily things. So I've just kind of been listening to that just to keep a factual information news source in my day-to-day life. And that's been really helpful, just kind of knowing what's going on that way. But I've I've heard a lot of talks about people who are going like into their freshman year or considering taking gap years and taking a lot of gen eds through JUCOs. So I think that's going to be a large transition, is more community college courses, and especially when you're considering just taking the class online, like you're comparing university classes to community colleges, and there's quite a large difference in the amount that they cost. So I think you're going to see a lot more people going to community colleges just to get their credits in the meantime during this all.
I've been thinking about the same thing quite a bit. I feel very fortunate that I have a position with a firm, which it's become like a family. It's student life. So I feel fortunate from that aspect. But I'm thinking of students that have no experience. So you interview on a platform like what we're doing here. You get the idea. So I mean, you have this interview and you get the job, and then how does it go from there? You end up being an intern in your living room, or how does that work? So as far as like getting employed, I think a lot of this, because globalization has been something that's kind of led up to this too. So now Tim could just as easily hire an intern in South Korea as he could at UT Arlington, to work in science and tech. It's an option because everything's pretty much online now versus, face to face. So you don't even need your interns or your employees to be in the space with you, since that's not even an option. So I think this whole thing with globalization and outsourcing is going to blow up even more. Maybe not with our company, but with most companies. So I think that should be a concern for students. So I think everybody just has to stand out even more. So they really have to go that extra mile. Their portfolio has to be better than everybody else. They have to communicate better than everyone else. I think it's more competitive than it's ever been.
So you feel like there's more pressure on you because of this?
I think there should be. Yeah, at least that's how people should be looking at it. I'm not a pessimist, but I'm a realist. I mean, just like we're having this conversation, and every conversation since this thing started has been, on Zoom or Teams or whatever. Well, you can do that with somebody in Mexico or Chile or Jordan or Finland or whatever. So I think things will change, and there's really nothing keeping us from doing that anyway, because design is design. This doesn't work in the culinary field. It has to be still somebody physically, cooking up the food. But in architecture, especially, I think maybe it's because I was over there for a few years and now I'm here. I really don't see a difference. I actually sat in on all the final projects for my colleagues in Finland because I missed a year because I transferred over. So they just graduated, all of them, with their undergrad. So I sat in on the Zoom meeting. It was like 3 a.m., and I would like excuse myself when I couldn't do it anymore at like 4 a.m. This was like 2 weeks ago, but I still sat in and watched them, present their final project and, go on from there. So I think it's definitely going to be challenging to find work if it's a career-oriented job. Question you're asking, Megan. More competition than before.
As far as the restaurant industry goes, it's a little harder to make changes around stuff like this, just because, I mean, like he pointed out, you still have to have people there to cook the food, and that's usually a team effort. So you're pretty much always going to be with people cooking at some point. There have been a lot of nice changes. I mean, like things like Grubhub exist and DoorDash, so it is possible to have a place where you're not interacting with the customer face to face as much. But there's only so many changes they can really make as far as kitchens go and the physical restaurant goes. That doesn't include like adding in a drive-through or getting rid of the dining space and making it just a pickup location. It's a little harder to work around that in this industry. And honestly, I'm actually kind of afraid that like people just aren't going to want to go out and eat as much, and it might diminish a little bit of the restaurant industry.
So if they actively taken a part of your curriculum and said, hey, we really need to talk about the hospitality and restaurant business, what if this happens again? Has that really been a big part of the discussion this semester?
Some of the teachers have. I took a class where you were supposed to design your own restaurant and bar, and he started asking us questions while we were working on our final project. How would you work around something like this if your restaurant had to close down? and you need to figure out how to keep going in a way where you can continue to serve everybody without them physically being there. How would you do it? So we were all sort of expected to work around this.
Hassan, what about you? Have you guys talked? I mean, you know how this is going to impact the architectural and design community. Have you talked about it actively in the classes about how this is going to impact the way you practice?
No, we haven't, and it really surprised me. I was expecting that the professors would really, be thinking outside the box, but I think everybody was kind of scrambling just to get through the semester. I'm perceiving next semester in the fall, it's summer, but definitely in the fall. I think it's definitely going to be a discussion.
So, on one hand, Hassan, like you mentioned, maybe this creates a more competitive environment professionally, but maybe it also creates an environment where we need to connect with each other and really remember that your experience is one of many. So, for the students that hear this, what do you want them to know? What is your message?
Don't panic. I mean, the changes that are going to need to happen to make this all continue to go forward are going to happen, and we'll figure it out as we get there.
And I think things always have a way of working themselves out. I've been walking the line just for years, trying to get through architecture school, just because it's been a dream of mine for a long time. And I have no regrets other than not doing this earlier. So I think everything always works out in the end. So this too shall pass. That's probably the biggest word of advice for everyone. This too shall pass.
Yeah, I would say a positive, or just something that I feel like I want other students to know, is that if you're feeling unmotivated, or if you feel really confused and you don't feel like you're putting your future on hold, or you feel discomforted, it's very normal. I feel like I'm going through it, and I know a lot of other people are going through it, and this is a first time thing for pretty much everyone on the planet right now. So we're all just have to take it one day at a time, and hopefully we can, get to a place where, if this does have to be the new normal, we can, it can feel a lot more comfortable for all of us, and we can find success.
So let me ask you guys this. Is a forum like this of any value to you?
Yeah, I think it actually helps, because some of this I actually wasn't really thinking very hard about until you started asking questions, and then it just kind of gave me a new perspective, I guess, when I got to think about it a little bit more.
I'm wondering if you'd be willing to talk to us again in the future.
I would.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, I'd be interested, because this is all relevant stuff, and we're still figuring that out. So none of us have the answers, but together we could kind of get closer.
Hassan is right. While we don't have all the answers, talking about it is the first step to moving forward. Thank you to Hassan, Nadia, Ashley, and Anna for joining us today on this episode of Trainer HL Talks. What do you think? How can we assure students will succeed during this global shift? And how do we prepare them for a world that will look different after graduation? How do we also help them grow as individuals outside the virtual or physical classroom? On our next episode, I will catch up with Tim and Nedia to get their thoughts on today's discussion, as well as ideas and suggestions for how university clients can prepare their facilities as campuses begin to reopen. Trainer HL is a national architecture, planning, and design firm located in the United States. The company holds a firm belief in sharing resources and insights with professionals, clients, and building users to shape the space we use to live and grow as people. For more information, visit trainerhl.com. That's TREANORHL.com.